Can you imagine if you're in the position of Pontius Pilate and it's barely daybreak and a group of people are gathered outside and they've got Jesus and they say, well, yeah, he's an evildoer. And then he says, well, why did you bring him to me? Why don't you judge him? They go, well, we can't put somebody to death. He's put somebody to death? What in the world is going on? And so, of course, Pilate wants to know. And by the way, Jesus wasn't afraid of being defiled and going into the presence of a Gentile. He was going to give his life for that Gentile. But here you go in verse 33. Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus. Jesus, come see me. And he said to him, are you the king of the Jews? In other words, he had heard that Jesus was claiming to be the king of the Jews. Jesus answered, remember, questions? Never that Jesus needs to know, but examine yourself. And Jesus says, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? In other words, what's going on inside your head, Pilate? Are you really kind of wondering? Are you really maybe wondering that I'm really the king of the Jews, or is this just hearsay? Ask yourself the question. Okay. Pilate answered, I'm not a Jew, am I? Oh, you answer for being sarcastic with the Lord. Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done? And Jesus said in verse 36, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Do you remember that when he got arrested and Peter whacked somebody's ear off, Jesus said, don't you know that I could call 12 legions of angels and scrap this? But I'm doing what the scripture said I was going to do. And in this particular case, Pilate, you don't have to worry about some kind of insurgents here in Jerusalem where I'm going to try to dethrone King Herod. That's not what my kingdom is about. My kingdom is not of this world. That was prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 2. In chapter 2, you might remember that King Nebuchadnezzar had had a dream and none of his soothsayers could answer the dream. And they kept saying, well, tell us the dream and then we'll tell you what it means. He said, no, you're not going to get away with that. You got to tell me what I dreamed. And so he's going to put all of the leaders to death, and word gets to Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. And Daniel says, give us a little bit of time and I'll tell you. And so God tells Daniel what the dream is. And then Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, here's what you dreamed. And here's what it means. And so it started with Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and then the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, and then the kingdom of the Greeks, and then the kingdom of the Romans, and then the kingdom of the Messiah. And in Daniel 2:44, he said, his kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is forever. That's what Jesus is saying. Pilate, I'm the fulfillment of Daniel 2:44. Not another kingdom, from this statue that you saw, but instead the fulfillment of the one who's going to reign forever. That's why he called himself Son of Man. Because in Daniel chapter 7, it says, one like unto the Son of Man, and his dominion is from everlasting to everlasting, his kingdom is forever. That's why they were so mad when Jesus called himself Son of Man. He's saying, I'm the fulfillment of Daniel 7. And here he says, I'm the fulfillment of Daniel 2. Have a good day.